The Henderson family Christmas had a hierarchy, and I had always been at the bottom of it. My older brother Marcus was a corporate lawyer at a prestigious Manhattan firm. My sister Victoria ran a successful real estate business that Dad had funded with a $2 million small loan. My younger brother Daniel had just made partner at his accounting firm at the age of 32, a fact that my parents mentioned approximately every 7 minutes. And then there was me, Sarah Henderson, the family disappointment, the one who had abandoned a real career to pursue journalism. Writing for free blogs again? Dad asked, his voice carrying across the formal dining room as the family gathered around the Christmas table. 23 relatives turned to look at me, their expressions ranging from pity to amusement. I saw your name on some website the other day. Couldn't even load properly on my phone. I took a bite of my turkey. It's investigative journalism, Dad. Is that what they call it now? Mom added, shaking her head with that particular expression of maternal disappointment she had perfected over 31 years. So embarrassing. I couldn't even tell the ladies at book club what you do. I just said you were in communications.
Victoria's Nortez.
Communications. That's generous, Mom. She adjusted the diamond tennis bracelet Dad had given her that morning, a Christmas gift that probably cost more than my annual salary at the newspaper where I worked before going independent. Remember when she turned down that marketing position at my company? Could have been making 6 figures by now. I remember, Dad said, his disappointment thick enough to carve. Instead, she's living in that tiny apartment, writing stories nobody reads about things nobody cares about. I continued eating. The cranberry sauce was particularly good this year. Marcus leaned forward, his Rolex catching the light from the chandelier. I tried to read one of your pieces last month, Sarah. Something about pharmaceutical companies? Couldn't get through the first paragraph. Too dense. Too boring. That's probably why you're not getting any traction. Maybe if you wrote something people actually wanted to read, Daniel chimed in, like lifestyle content, recipes, travel tips, something with mass appeal. That's not the kind of journalism I do, I said quietly. That's the problem, Dad said. You don't do the kind of journalism anyone wants. You spend months on these investigations that get, what, a few hundred views? Meanwhile, your siblings are building real careers, contributing to society. You're 31 years old, Sarah. When are you going to grow up and get a real job? Aunt Patricia, Mom's sister and the family's unofficial gossip coordinator, took this as her cue. I was just telling Helen last week that it's such a shame about Sarah. All that education, all that potential, and she's throwing it away on these little blog posts. And still single. No husband, no children, no career to speak of. It must be so hard for you, Margaret. Mom nodded solemnly. It is, Patricia.
It truly is.
We did everything right with her. Private schools, the best opportunities. And this is what we get. At least she's not asking us for money anymore, Dad muttered, though loud enough for everyone to hear. That's one improvement, I suppose. I hadn't asked them for money since I was 24, but pointing that out would only extend the conversation, so I reached for more mashed potatoes instead. Cousin Bradley, Victoria's husband and the family's resident finance expert, decided to pile on. You know, Sarah, I ran some numbers the other day. Just out of curiosity. Based on what you would have earned if you'd taken the marketing position Victoria offered, you've lost approximately $400,000 in potential income over the past 7 years. That's not counting compound interest, retirement contributions, or benefits. Thank you for that analysis, Bradley, I said. I'm just saying, from a purely financial perspective, your choices have been suboptimal. He adjusted his designer glasses with a self-satisfied smirk. Some people just aren't built for success, I suppose. No shame in that. My younger cousin Melissa, fresh out of business school, chimed in. I actually read somewhere that journalism is a dying industry. Like, literally dying. Print media is collapsing, digital journalism doesn't pay anything, and AI is about to replace whatever's left. Have you thought about pivoting to something more sustainable? Content marketing, maybe? Or social media management? Those are actually in demand. I'll keep that in mind, I said, taking a sip of water. Uncle Richard, Dad's brother and a retired banking executive, leaned forward with the expression of someone about to deliver profound wisdom. The problem, Sarah, is that you've always been too idealistic, too concerned with making a difference instead of making money. In the real world, idealism doesn't pay the bills. You can't eat principles. You can't retire on righteousness. That's a valid perspective, I acknowledged. See, that's exactly what I mean, he continued. You're too agreeable.
No killer instinct.
In my day, I would have argued back, defended myself, but you just sit there and take it. That passivity is probably why your career never went anywhere. I simply nodded and continued eating. The passivity he was criticizing was, in fact, strategic patience. I had learned long ago that arguing with this family was pointless. They had already decided who I was. Words wouldn't change that. Evidence might. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again.
And again.
Can you silence that thing?
Victoria snapped.
We're trying to have a family dinner here. Though I suppose you wouldn't know about professional etiquette working from your apartment in your pajamas. The phone buzzed again. I pulled it out just enough to glance at the screen. The name there made my heart stop for exactly 1 second before I schooled my expression back to neutral. Probably another rejection email, Marcus said with a laugh. Or maybe a request for free content. That seems to be all you're worth these days. I slipped the phone back into my pocket without answering. The timing would need to be perfect. The conversation moved on to the annual Henderson Achievement Parade. Marcus was handling a merger worth $300 million. Victoria had just closed on a waterfront property development. Daniel's firm had been featured in Financial Times. And what about you, Sarah? Grandma Eleanor asked, her voice quavering but her eyes sharp as ever. She was 92 and still the most perceptive person in the family. What have you been working on, dear? Before I could answer, Dad cut in. She's been working on the same thing she's always working on, Mother. Nothing that matters. Nothing that pays. Nothing that we can be proud of. I looked at Grandma Eleanor and smiled slightly. I've been working on a series about corruption in the pharmaceutical industry. Price-fixing schemes that have cost American patients billions. See. Victoria rolled her eyes. Conspiracy theories. That's what she does now. Writes conspiracy theories for her little blog. It's not a blog, I said calmly. It's published in. Does it matter where it's published if nobody reads it? Marcus interrupted. Sarah, we're not trying to be cruel. We're trying to help you see reality. You're 31. You have no savings, no retirement plan, no real career path. You need to think about your future. I appreciate your concern, I said. Daniel's wife, Karen, who had remained silent until now, apparently felt the need to contribute. You know what I don't understand? Why someone with your intelligence would waste it on journalism. You were always the smartest one in this family, Sarah. Everyone knew it, but you've done nothing with it. It's almost like you're trying to fail. Maybe she is, Victoria muttered. Some people are addicted to struggle. They find comfort in being the underdog. It's a psychological thing. I actually read about that, Bradley added. Self-sabotage. It's common in people with imposter syndrome. They subconsciously undermine their own success because deep down, they don't believe they deserve it. The entire table nodded sagely, apparently satisfied with this armchair diagnosis of my psychological failings. Have you considered therapy? Aunt Patricia asked, her voice dripping with false concern. For the self-sabotage? I know a wonderful psychiatrist, very discreet. No one would have to know. I appreciate the recommendation, I said evenly. Concern isn't going to pay your rent, Dad said. Have you considered going back to school? Learning something practical? Accounting like Daniel? Or law like Marcus? It's not too late to make something of yourself. Mom nodded vigorously. We could help with tuition. Consider it an investment in your future. Because right now, sweetheart, you don't have one. My phone buzzed again. This time, it rang. I had been expecting this. Sarah, Dad said warningly, we're at dinner. I apologize, I said, pulling out my phone. But I need to take this one. Do you mind if I put it on speaker? I'm expecting some information I need to share with everyone anyway. On speaker? Victoria's eyebrows shot up. What? Is it your landlord calling about your overdue rent? We don't need to hear about your financial problems, Sarah. Something like that, I said, and pressed accept. The voice that came through the speaker was deep, professional, and carried the weight of institutions that had shaped American journalism for over a century. Ms. Henderson, this is Robert Callahan. I'm the chairman of the Pulitzer Prize Board. I apologize for calling on Christmas Day, but given the embargo lifting tomorrow morning, we wanted to give you advance notice regarding your nomination in the investigative reporting category. The room went completely silent. I watched my father's fork freeze halfway to his mouth. My mother's wine glass tipped slightly in her grip. Marcus's expression shifted from condescension to confusion to something I had never seen on his face before: uncertainty. Thank you, Mr. Callahan, I said evenly. I appreciate the call. I have to say, the chairman continued, his voice warm with genuine enthusiasm, your investigation into the pharmaceutical price-fixing conspiracy was extraordinary. 18 months of work, 200 sources, documentation that led to 3 federal indictments and the resignation of 4 pharmaceutical CEOs. The board was unanimous in their assessment. Your series fundamentally changed federal policy on drug pricing oversight. Victoria's tennis bracelet glinted as her hand trembled against the white tablecloth. I was just doing my job, I said. Your job saved American patients an estimated $47 billion over the next decade, according to the Congressional Budget Office analysis. That's not just journalism, Ms. Henderson. That's public service of the highest order. Dad finally set down his fork. His face had gone pale. I also wanted to let you know that the New York Times has been trying to reach you. They'd like to discuss a senior investigative correspondent position. And I believe 60 Minutes called about a profile piece. Your assistant has been fielding quite a few requests. My assistant will handle those inquiries, I said. Thank you for letting me know. One more thing, the chairman added. The Pulitzer Center has confirmed your grant for the next investigation. $3 million over 2 years. I understand you're looking into defense contractor fraud. The board is quite eager to see where that leads. Marcus made a small choking sound. That's correct, I said. Thank you for your support. We should be thanking you, Ms. Henderson. Journalists like you are exactly what this industry needs. Enjoy your Christmas and congratulations again. I ended the call and looked up at my family. 23 faces stared back at me, frozen in various states of shock. Bradley's financial calculations suddenly seemed less impressive. Melissa's career advice about content marketing hung in the air like a bad joke. Uncle Richard's lecture about killer instinct had aged remarkably poorly in the span of 2 minutes. Aunt Patricia's mouth opened and closed several times, like a fish suddenly finding itself out of water. Her recommendation for a psychiatrist now seemed almost comically misguided. The cranberry sauce really is excellent this year, I said, reaching for my fork. Mom, is this Grandma's recipe? The silence stretched for exactly 12 seconds. I counted. Then everyone started talking at once. The Pulitzer Prize? Aunt Patricia's voice cut through the chaos. The actual Pulitzer Prize? I don't understand, Mom said, her wine glass now fully forgotten on the table, red liquid pooling against the white linen. You never said anything. You never told us. You never asked, I said simply. You assumed. Dad's face had shifted from pale to a deep, uncomfortable red. That investigation, he mentioned. The pharmaceutical one. That was in the Washington Post. I saw the headlines. I didn't realize I never connected. You never read my byline. I finished for him. It's fine. You've made it clear for years that you don't read my work. My phone buzzed again. I glanced at it. Excuse me. This is the executive editor of the Washington Post. I answered, once again on speaker. Sarah, Merry Christmas. I just got off the phone with Robert. I wanted to be the first to congratulate you. Well, second, I suppose. The newsroom is beside itself. We're running a special feature tomorrow on the investigation. Front page, above the fold. The managing editor wants to know if you can come in for a photo session at the print facility. I can arrange that, I said. Also, I don't know if Robert mentioned it, but Anderson Cooper's team has been calling. They want you for a special report on investigative journalism in the digital age. They're calling you the voice of a new generation of accountability journalism. Direct quote from their pitch. Victoria's face had gone from confused to something approaching ill. Her real estate empire suddenly seemed very small in comparison. I'll have my team coordinate, I said. Your team?
Right.
Still can't believe you have a team now. 4 researchers, 2 fact-checkers, and a documentary crew following your next investigation. That grant from the Pulitzer Center came through, I assume? It did. $3 million to investigate defense contractor fraud. You're going to nail them, Sarah. I know you are.
Call me after the holiday.
We need to discuss the book deal offers, too. There are 4 major publishers in a bidding war right now. I'll call you tomorrow. I ended the call. The table remained silent. Even the children, usually oblivious to adult drama, had stopped squirming in their seats. You have a team? Daniel finally managed. You have a documentary crew? For the past 8 months, I said. The defense contractor investigation required more resources than I could handle alone. 8 months, Marcus repeated, his voice hollow. You've had a team for 8 months. A $3 million grant. Publishers fighting over your book. And you never said anything? I met his eyes evenly. When, exactly, was I supposed to mention it? Between being told my work was worthless and being informed I had no future? During the part where you said you couldn't get through the first paragraph of my boring investigation? The same investigation that just got nominated for a Pulitzer? Marcus had no response. My phone rang again. This time I laughed slightly. This is becoming a pattern. Do you mind? No one objected. Ms. Henderson? This is Jennifer Walsh, personal assistant to Senator Mitchell. The senator wanted to call you directly to congratulate you on the nomination, but he's currently in a classified briefing. He asked me to convey that your investigation into pharmaceutical price fixing was instrumental in passing the Drug Pricing Transparency Act last month. He'd like to invite you to the signing ceremony at the White House in January. Mom's hand flew to her chest. Please thank the senator for me, I said. I'll have my office coordinate. Of course. And Ms. Henderson? The senator also mentioned that your upcoming investigation into defense contractors is of significant interest to several Senate committees. They may want to consult with you as their own investigations proceed. I'd be happy to discuss that after the story is published. Understood. The senator sends his regards and wishes you a Merry Christmas. I ended the call and returned to my meal. The White House. Dad's voice cracked. You're going to the White House? For the bill signing, yes. It's not a social visit, Dad. It's professional recognition. Professional recognition, he repeated weakly. Grandma Eleanor was the first to break the strange, suspended silence that had fallen over the table. She reached over and patted my hand, her aged fingers warm against my skin. I always knew, dear, she said softly. I read every single one of your pieces. Subscribe to the Washington Post specifically for your work. That pharmaceutical investigation was brilliant. The way you traced the money through 17 shell companies. Masterful. I squeezed her hand. Thank you, Grandma. You didn't need their approval, she continued, loud enough for everyone to hear. You never did. You had mine. And now you have the approval of the most prestigious journalism institution in the world. I imagine that feels somewhat satisfying. It does, I admitted. Dad pushed back from the table, his chair scraping loudly against the hardwood floor. Sarah, He stopped, struggling for words. Why didn't you tell us? We could have supported you. We could have. Supported me? I kept my voice gentle, but the words still landed like stones. Dad, I have told you. Every family dinner, every holiday, every phone call. I told you I was working on important investigations. I told you I was published in major outlets. I told you I was making a difference.
You chose not to believe me.
You chose not to read my work. You chose to assume I was failing because my success didn't look like what you expected. Mom's eyes had filled with tears. We didn't know, sweetheart. We didn't understand. You didn't want to understand. I corrected gently. There's a difference. Marcus is a corporate lawyer who helps wealthy companies avoid accountability. Victoria sells overpriced properties to people who can barely afford them. Daniel's firm was recently investigated for questionable billing practices. Yes, Daniel, I know about that. I'm an investigative journalist, remember? But those careers were impressive to you because they came with fancy titles and visible wealth. Daniel went pale. How did you? That investigation is sealed. I have sources everywhere, I said mildly. It's kind of my job. Victoria's face had gone from ill to furious, but she seemed unable to formulate a response. Her diamond bracelet caught the light again as she gripped the table's edge. The Pulitzer Prize, Aunt Patricia said suddenly, as if the words had just fully registered. The Pulitzer Prize. Do you know what that means? That's the Nobel Prize of Journalism. That's the most prestigious award a journalist can receive. Sarah, you're going to be famous. I supplied. Probably. The Washington Post feature runs tomorrow. 60 Minutes is filming next month. The book will be published next fall. And the documentary about the pharmaceutical investigation is already in post-production. Netflix acquired the rights last week. Netflix. Mom whispered. 7-figure deal. I confirmed. They're calling it The Conspiracy You Paid For. It's about how pharmaceutical companies colluded to overcharge American patients by billions while regulators looked the other way. The silence that followed was different from before. This wasn't shock or confusion. This was the slow, uncomfortable realization of exactly how wrong they had been, and for how long. My phone buzzed again. I checked it and smiled slightly. One more call, I said. This one's important. I answered on speaker. Sarah, it's David Chen from Columbia Journalism School. I'm calling because the board has made a decision about the endowed chair position. They'd like to offer you the Henderson Chair of Investigative Journalism. It comes with a full professorship, a research budget, and the opportunity to train the next generation of investigative reporters. The irony of the chair's name wasn't lost on us, by the way. Your family's donation from decades ago funded the position you've now earned on your own merit. Dad's face went through several colors in rapid succession. The Henderson Chair, I repeated, unable to suppress a small smile. That is rather ironic, isn't it? Your grandfather established it 40 years ago, and now his granddaughter will hold it. I imagine he would have been proud. I hope so. Take your time with the decision. There's no pressure. But Sarah, speaking personally, not as a board member, your work is extraordinary. The students at Columbia would be lucky to learn from you. Thank you, David. I'll be in touch after the holiday. I ended the call and looked around the table at my family. The same family that had spent the last decade dismissing my career, belittling my choices, and treating me as the household disappointment. So, I said pleasantly, how's everyone's turkey? No one answered. I finished my meal in a silence that was, for once, entirely comfortable. At least for me. As I helped clear the dishes, because some habits die hard, Marcus cornered me in the kitchen. His face was a complicated mixture of emotions I had never seen from him before. Sarah, he said quietly, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not just for today, but for years of. Save it, I said, not unkindly. I don't need your apology, Marcus. I never needed your approval. I just wanted you to see me, to actually see me, instead of the failure you decided I was. I see you now. Only because the Pulitzer Committee told you to. I put the last dish in the washer and turned to face him. I'm going to accept that chair at Columbia. And I'm going to keep investigating. And the next story is going to be even bigger. You can be proud of me or not. It doesn't change what I do or who I am. Victoria appeared in the doorway. Her face had lost its fury and now just looked tired. Sarah, she started. About what I said earlier, the blog comments, You called my Pulitzer-nominated investigation a conspiracy theory, I said evenly. About an hour ago.
In front of the whole family.
While I sat there knowing that tomorrow, the Washington Post would run a front-page feature about how that conspiracy theory changed federal policy and saved American patients $47 billion. Victoria's face crumpled. I didn't know. You didn't want to know, I corrected. None of you did. It was easier to have a family failure to feel superior to. It validated your own choices. I walked past them both, back toward the living room where the rest of the family was still sitting in stunned silence. Dad intercepted me in the hallway. His eyes were red. Your grandfather would have been proud, he said roughly. The chair, the Henderson chair, he would have loved that you earned it. Not through family connection, through your own work. I know, I said. That's why I'm accepting it. Sarah, he stopped struggling again.
I'm sorry.
I should have read your work. I should have paid attention. I should have. You should have, I agreed. But you didn't. And I became who I am anyway. Not because of this family's support, but in spite of its absence. He nodded slowly, accepting that truth. I gathered my coat and bag from the hall closet. My car was parked outside, and I had a documentary crew to meet tomorrow, a newspaper photo shoot to prepare for, and a defense contractor investigation that needed my attention. You're leaving? Mom appeared, her makeup slightly smeared from tears. But it's Christmas. We haven't even done presents yet. I think I've received enough today, I said gently. The phone calls, the validation, the looks on your faces when you finally understood. That's not fair, she whispered. No, I agreed. It's not. But neither were the last 10 years of being treated like the family disappointment. I think we're even now. Bradley appeared behind Mom, his earlier smugness completely evaporated. Sarah, about those financial calculations I mentioned, I didn't mean to imply. You implied exactly what you meant to imply, I said pleasantly. You were trying to quantify my failure in dollars and cents. Shall I tell you what the Netflix deal was worth? Or the book advance? Or the $3 million grant? Would that make your spreadsheet more accurate? He swallowed hard and said nothing. Melissa rushed up next, her business school confidence nowhere to be seen. Sarah, I was just trying to help with the career advice. I didn't know you were already, that you had. Already successful? I supplied. Already accomplished? Already everything you assumed I wasn't. She nodded miserably. Here's some career advice for you, Melissa. Never assume you understand someone else's career better than they do, especially when you haven't bothered to actually look at their work. Uncle Richard was the last to approach, his banking executive confidence notably diminished. That killer instinct comment I made was ironic, I finished. Given that I've spent the last 18 months methodically dismantling a pharmaceutical conspiracy that involved some of the most powerful corporations in America, I think my killer instinct is fine, Uncle Richard. I just choose my battles more carefully than you do. I kissed Grandma Eleanor goodbye, the only family member who had ever believed in me, and walked out into the cold December evening. Behind me, I heard the family erupting into frantic conversation. Questions about my work, my success, my future. All the things they could have asked at any point over the last decade, if they had cared enough to listen. My phone buzzed one final time as I reached my car. A text from my assistant. CNN, NBC, and BBC all requesting interviews for tomorrow. Also, the publisher's weekly announcement went out early. Your book just hit #1 on pre-order lists. Congratulations, boss. I smiled, slid into the driver's seat, and drove away from the Henderson family Christmas. For the first time in my life, I hadn't needed to defend myself. I hadn't needed to explain. I hadn't needed to argue or justify or prove anything. The Pulitzer Committee had done it for me. The Washington Post had done it for me. The senator, the Netflix deal, the Columbia chair, they had all spoken louder than I ever could. And next Christmas, when I returned, if I returned, everything would be different. Not because I had changed, but because they had finally seen what had been true all along. The failed journalist they had mocked for a decade was the most successful Henderson of them all. They just hadn't bothered to read my byline. 3 months later, I stood at the podium in Columbia University's Low Library, accepting the Henderson Chair of Investigative Journalism. The ceremony was covered by every major news outlet. My family watched from the audience. All of them, for the first time in years, silent and respectful. The Pulitzer Prize ceremony followed in April. In my acceptance speech, I thanked my grandmother, my editors, and my sources, the people who had believed in me when it mattered.
I did not thank my family.
Some omissions speak louder than words. The Netflix documentary became the most watched in the platform's history. My book hit #1. And through it all, my family watched from the sidelines, finally seeing what had been true all along. Because in the end, the best revenge isn't served cold. It's served with a Pulitzer Prize, a Netflix deal, and the quiet satisfaction of knowing you became everything they said you couldn't be. All while they weren't paying attention.